Have you ever wondered how menopause podcasters and influencers actually make money? And have you ever caught yourself wondering whether a product that's they're talking about is genuine, like they really like it, or is it just paid advertising? Well, then, if so, this episode is for you. It was really This episode really was prompted by one of the members in my Biohacking Menopause membership group who started to ask me about stuff like that. And it was a really thoughtful question about podcast hosts and menopause influencers. And the moment she asked me, I said, this has to be public. I think this will really help and really empower women. She was so excited when I said, maybe I should do an episode. So this one is dedicated for you. You know who you are. And I'm doing this because I think during menopause, it can be a really vulnerable time when you are doom scrolling at 2 a.m. looking for a solution, for relief, for some kind of pain, or you're not sleeping, your body feels like it's totally unfamiliar to you and your mood is so unpredictable. You are a lot more susceptible to the influence of somebody trying to sell you things. That's why you have that QVC shopping channel at 2 a.m. because they know people will buy. I've heard from people like that's when they sell the most, like 2 or 3 a.m. So it hits hard when it's somebody that you trust or you like, or they're maybe really, really convincing in their dialogue. So today I just want to pull the curtain back a little bit, especially in this world of menopause and menopause podcasts. And I want to honestly talk about what it takes to run a podcast, where this money comes from, where it goes, why monetization even exists, and what are the different income streams that we have so that we can keep doing what we're so passionate about doing. And this is not an episode to call out podcast hosts or things like that. I just want it to be a really transparent episode. So it's not so much, we're not taking a deep dive into menopause, but just sort of the behind the scenes kind of thing. Because I've been podcasting for over 5 years and released over 350 episodes. So most of that time, this podcast cost me money, and real money. And it's not just time and energy, but I have to pay for platforms and editing and software and all these things that you probably don't see. And yet the moment someone hears a discount code or a sponsored message or a product recommendation in a menopause podcast or an episode, the assumption really quickly becomes, oh, they're just selling. Like they're not really like that product. Not so fast. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And the reality is that if menopause podcasters or just podcast hosts in general don't eventually make money, then the podcast disappears, the content disappears, the education goes away, the podcast dies, and passion just doesn't pay editors or the bills. The downloads do, and the commissions do, or the sponsors do, the money made from sponsors, whatever it is, the monetization is, that's what pays the bills, unfortunately. So that doesn't mean that everything you hear is totally ethical, but not everyone operates with integrity. So especially in menopause, when sometimes I feel like there's some, I don't know what they're called, just like people out there trying to take advantage of us. I know you're super smart, and I know you can smell a fish from a mile away. But even so, I want to bring back a little bit of transparency here. And I want you to know how some of these affiliations work and how sponsorships work, what a sponsored episode means, and how I personally make decisions on what I will and will not share with you. And I want you to leave this episode really feeling empowered and knowing how to think critically, because someone who's selling a product doesn't automatically mean that the product is bad or good. It should always invite critical thinking. And I know you're so good at that. I know you can. And it invites also some due diligence on your part and some curiosity, right? Being open, but not too open. So in biohacking menopause, we're all about testing, experimenting, assessing, and deciding what's right for your body, and not just blindly following everybody else, right? You're good at that. So I'm going to share something a little personal with you. My husband and I, we sold our house, our car, our possessions to invest in this work that I do and build a life that's really aligned with our values, which is we want to have time. We want to spend time with each other, with our kids, our family, our friends. We want to travel, but we need money for that. So we can't take any old business model. And this is why this one's attractive to us. It exists because of, or partly exists because of that choice. And it can't exist without some sustainability. And everyone's in this boat. Anyone who decides to make a podcast And unless they have all the money in the world and they're just doing it for fun, but then you wonder if it's going to be how long it'll last, right? So I'm choosing honesty today over comfort. And if you listen to menopause podcasts or follow those influencers or ever felt conflicted about who to trust during this transition, then I hope this episode really helps you. So, what does it actually take to run a podcast? What you don't see is the time, the energy, this emotional labor that we have. There's planning, there's research into our guests, there's preparation. Like, I have to read books, I have to go through programs before I actually take on a guest. I want to deep dive into who they are. I don't just take anybody. You cannot imagine the amount of emails I just have to delete or I kindly decline for people who want to come on the episode. And that's a lot of work too. That's why I hire a VA to go through some of that for me and help me decide who to take, who not to take. Then there's follow-ups. Once we accept somebody, we have to send them emails. We have to send them the Zoom link. And then post-production, we have the editing, we have the show notes that have to be made. We have to spend time looking for good keywords or good podcast titles so that you get what you need to know in that, I don't know, like 5 or 6 words that we post. We have to make thumbnails for YouTube and emails and newsletters and social media posts. And then there's the guest coordination for rescheduling for those people who don't show up or they need to reschedule cancellations. There's so much work that goes in here. And I have editors and assistants, designers, agents. I personally have got an editor, I've got 2 VAs, and I've got my website guy, the IT guy. And that's a small podcast, right? Imagine how many people you'll have on your team when you grow and you get bigger. And I've got the costs of the hosting platform. I use Libsyn. It's great, but I have to pay every month for it. I've got the editors. I have a lot of apps and software, equipment, and upgrades that I have to do. There's marketing and distribution. Sometimes I don't do this actually myself, but I know other podcast hosts can do this, is they'll run Facebook ads on their post about the episode to try to attract more listeners, which is something I should probably learn how to do. And there's some other ways to advertise your podcast. And that takes money. And it takes a lot of money. The more people you want to reach, the more money you have to put in. But there's no guarantees either, which is why I haven't done that yet. I'm kind of scared, but I need to do it at some point. And then there's the team salaries and there's contractor fees. And then there's the podcast hosts that travel a lot because they're speaking at conferences or they're attending conferences to learn or continued education. This is what I'm doing all the time. I do travel to menopause conventions or gerontology conventions, and I have to pay for hotels. I have to pay for my flights. I have to pay for the ticket to enter. It's a lot of money in order to keep educated so that I can keep bringing the latest and greatest of information. And then there are podcast hosts that actually get paid to do this. I do remember Ben Greenfield. He's a huge podcast. And I remember him saying that his speaking engagements was his bread and butter. And that guy shares a lot of affiliates and links and products and is always pushing it. But boy, then he must be paid a lot of money. And I know at least the podcasts, you got to be big for that, for people to be able to pay you, to fly you out, pay your expenses, and pay you to speak. You have to have a pretty big podcast. And if you don't, I know we all pay it out of our own pocket, hoping that we're going to get more visibility. It's just, those are the costs. So podcasting is not just like, oh, let's record and then upload. No, it's a total business. And most podcast hosts will start small with a passion. That's how it happened to me. My son told me, "Hey, Mom, why don't you start a podcast?" Didn't even think about it, but I was listening to a lot of them. And I was like, oh, that could be interesting. I'm very curious. My friends, when I was little, used to ask me if I worked for the KGB because I'd ask so many questions. Everybody thought I'd be a journalist or something, but I didn't. So it kind of fits my personality. And I did it during my gerontology studies where I didn't have much time, but I just was recording and uploading it myself. Let's see what happens. So that's what most people go, let's see where this goes. And I saw there were people downloading and there were more and more and more. And then I got feedback and people wanted to fill this gap. And I thought, okay, well then there's something here. And almost 6 years later, here I am still recording. But I have a team because I cannot do it by myself. And that costs money. So if you are serious about your podcast and you want it to grow, then you got to invest in it. And it's money that keeps it alive, unfortunately, because passion alone doesn't pay the rent or your travel or whatever it is that you need, your doctor bills. This is where monetization sort of enters the picture. And now I want to share with you some of the several ways that podcast hosts monetize. And you probably can guess some of them. And I'm sure there are others that exist. I just don't know about them. But these are the ones that I know. So the first one is affiliate marketing. That's kind of an obvious one. That's when somebody goes, hey, use my link, or here's 10% off if you use my code. The typical commissions are about 5 to 10%. Unless if you're a big podcast host, you could negotiate better. I don't know. I'm such a bad negotiator. Okay, it is what it is. And so that means if you have a product that costs $100, then the host makes between $5 and $10. And if it's a $10 product, they make between 50 cents and a dollar. It's not much. It's not much at all. Okay. It's really little. So I don't like to rely on affiliates. If you have a higher end product, like if you're talking about a sauna, somebody buys one, well, those things cost $10,000, $20,000. So you may be making $1,000 or a couple $1,000s in commission. And again, maybe if you're a really big influencer and there are tons of people who have money listening to your podcast, that happens. But I don't really like to rely too much on affiliates. And then there's sponsored ads. So this is the one where you hear the mid-roll or the pre-roll ad where you go, hey, this podcast is sponsored by so-and-so, or halfway through the episode, hey, I'm here to share something with you. You know, it's an ad. It's kind of obvious. I like these because it is obvious. You're not trying to sneak something on somebody and all that. And you get a chance to share what your sponsor has to offer. And the fees for that can range from hundreds to thousands of dollars per episode. Again, the bigger the podcast, that means the more downloads they have. That means that company has a better chance to get their product visible, then the more that person makes, right? That's just kind of how it is. That's why I'm always saying, hey, download the episode or share it with a friend. Downloads really, really count. And that helps with the sponsored episodes. So there are things called sponsored episodes. That means that the whole episode is funded by that brand. And that is also pretty obvious, I think. At least I try to make it obvious and transparent. And that can range from hundreds of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars. Again, people who have really big podcasts get to ask for the beaucoup dollars, right? So how can you tell? At least with me, I make it as transparent as I can. I may say it in the podcast episode, or I put it in my show notes or in the newsletter saying, hey, give thanks to our sponsors. And then I list them so you know who those people are. And some episodes are not sponsored, but they sound like they are, because sometimes happens to me where I interview somebody and then at the end they go, oh, and there's this product that I'm affiliated with or created or whatever. And I'm caught off guard. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. And we talk about it. And I usually ask for some kind of a discount code for you, even right then and there. I know it's sometimes pressure, but if I do know about it in advance, then I ask them to please generate something for our audience. And then the next one is advertising your own products. So podcast hosts may have programs or membership programs. Like me, I've got a membership, courses, one-to-one coaching or group coaching. Maybe they have a supplement line or their own skincare line or whatever it is that they're making. And they get a chance to talk about that on their podcast. Fair enough. I mean, they're making money. That's actually great money because it usually goes directly to them. It's not like a percentage of a commission. So although there is things like with my membership, I have to pay every year to Mighty Networks to be able to use that platform. So it's not like I get all the money, but it's a better shot than when you have just a commission on somebody else's product. Then you have paid subscriptions. I don't have this, but there are podcast hosts that have an episode. And if you want to hear the rest of the episode, then you need to be subscribed and you have to pay for that subscription. Peter Attia is one of them that I know of, but there's plenty of them that do that. I don't do that. And the reason they do this is so that you don't have those pre-roll and mid-roll ads. It's like takes away the ads. It's kind of like Netflix. You can watch TV and there's all these ads that happen, or you can pay for a subscription of Netflix and it's ad free. That's the way they do that. And then some of them charge for show notes, for example, like a subscription to their show notes for a deeper dive of the show notes. I know Peter Attia does that too. And fair enough, they spend a lot of time in making these show notes and all that. So that's one other way that podcast hosts can make money. And then there's YouTube monetization. So it's quite simple to just throw your episode onto YouTube. They never are, usually if you're a smaller podcast like me, it's not like you get big because of that. It's usually have to make a bit more of an effort. So there are menopause influencers out there that Some of them have podcasts, some of them don't, but they spend a lot of time and effort in creating the content that you want to hear. So maybe this makeup tutorial for women over 50, or this is my experience with HRT. They're almost like solo episodes, but they give graphics and there's a lot of editing that goes into it. I think it's a lot of hard work. But if you're good and you grow really well, then you don't really talk about so much about affiliates and things like that, but you get paid by YouTube. So YouTube puts their own ads kind of wherever they want, but that's a really, really interesting monetization model. It's a whole other can of worms, like a lot of other work, but maybe worth it. And that's why some people go down that route. And then the last thing that I know about is the speaking and the consulting and the brand partnership. So somebody flying you off to hopefully a nice destination, you speak on stage and all expenses paid. And that's kind of nice too. It would be nice if I could do that. I don't do that. I guess I'm not that big yet, but I'll get there. Now, my numbers and my podcast is sort of my reality. Again, I want to be totally transparent with you. I've had over 350 episodes. Hopefully you've listened to all of them, right? And all of the episodes before 2024 were unsponsored. Nobody paid me for those episodes. And in total, I've only done 13 out of 350 episodes as sponsored episodes. And so for 2025, I had 2 episodes per week. That's 104 episodes. And I only just started working with sponsored episodes. And that's with a couple of episodes in 2024 that were sponsored. I had probably 9 or 10 episodes in 2025 that were sponsored. And you know what those are. They're pretty obvious. So it's not a lot. It's not a lot of episodes. I think most of my episodes, and I'm very finicky. It's not like I don't want to do more sponsored episodes. I would, but I don't like everybody who approaches me. And then when I do find somebody I really like, and if they don't have a budget, I still do it because I think it's really valuable information for you. I know other podcast hosts who would accept anything and run with it. They'll run more ads, run more sponsored episodes, and take all that they can. Not my menopause besties, not the ones that I am connected with. I know all of these girls have integrity, but I have met others. And unfortunately, I think they're usually guys most of the time, not always. And they just do whatever because money talks, but I can't help having integrity. It's really important to me. And my podcast episode pretty much ran at a loss and negative for years and years. And it took me 4 years just to cover some of my costs. So I want year 5 or, year 6, I guess is where we're now, to be about sustainability so I can reinvest in my business and bring you better content and better guests. I mean, I love my guests. They're all fabulous, but maybe bigger guests or people who maybe I think are really great. Maybe they don't have time. I'm trying to get Dr. Marie Claire Haver. You probably wondered, why hasn't Sora interviewed her or Tamsin Fidel? I have reached out. I have asked. They're busy writing a book or creating a documentary. They're like, get back to me. But if I were really big, they would probably make time, right? But that's why we got to grow. We got to get bigger and bigger guests. So how do I handle affiliations personally? My philosophy, not everyone is like me. And I just want you to I want to be transparent and I want you to be understanding what's out there in terms of other podcasts. So many of my guests offer affiliations and they offer commissions like with that. So oftentimes lately I've been declining. I'm like, I just keep it, pass the savings on to the listener because the commissions are so small that it's not even worth chasing the checks. And it's not worth it. So I'd rather I will always ask for a discount. I will always ask for some kind of code or something, but it doesn't always mean that I make a commission. And a part of this also is because I've learned over the years that affiliates can change, and they do. It's happened to me so many times that they change the codes or they change the link, and they sometimes tell me, they sometimes don't tell me. And this is really lame because I can't go back and scrub all my episodes and put in a little soundbite or change the show notes. So just let it go. Let it go. It is what it is. And that's why many of my old episodes don't generate any commissions. They're just sort of broken systems now. So that's why I don't like to rely on affiliates at all. They're unreliable and it's just not my main focus. And I there's so many products I do love and I think they're great and I'll still talk about them and I'll still try to find a code. And very often the girls in my biohacking menopause membership group, if I don't have a code, sometimes they, oh, I like this product, this and that, and I'll say it's great. I don't have a code. If I know somebody, I have other podcast besties who do. So I go and I get their code and I share that. But if I don't find that, my new go-to is ChatGPT. I go, hey, can you find a discount code for this supplement or this product? And ChatGPT will find it. I'm not always, and so there are many out there that are also old and they don't work anymore. But once in a while, you hit on one and you're like, this is great. Somebody's making a commission. That's fine. I don't care. I get my discount. So use your ChatGPT to help you get more discounts. So when I get someone out there who's sends me a product, they want to send me something. I get so many emails, I get so many DMs on my Instagram or my Facebook, and I reject most of them because I do get lots of stuff, people who want to send. So I said, before you send to me, let me take a look. If it's, sometimes I can see immediately, like, this has nothing to do with menopause. Like, why even bother me? So then if it does seem something interesting, I have to go and research it. I have to go and ask them, do you have any clinical trials? Do you have anything to back this up? And I don't want, if you have a supplement that's got curcumin in it, I don't want a study that says curcumin is good for inflammation. No, I want to see your product because I know it's good for inflammation. That's not a study on your product. You also have to take it with a grain of salt. When you look at studies on clinical trials on a product, they also have paid research lab to do the research, and we know that numbers can be twisted. So it's really hard to decide on how good the research is, but it takes work. It takes time. This is what stuff that you don't see that goes behind the scenes. It's not like we, at least I don't, accept anything. And so you have to spend the time doing the research. You have to look at what's out there. I spend time on ChatGPT as well, like scan through all the reviews, tell me what's been said out there, what isn't. It takes time. And then if it looks good, then I say, okay, send it to me. But a lot of stuff that gets sent to me doesn't actually make the cut either. So once it's sent to me, and I'm really fortunate to have some really nice products that I do use in the end sent to me, and I get them for free. And not every sponsor, so it depends on the podcast host and the contract that you make with them. Sometimes sponsors say, send you as much product as you want, like whenever. Some sponsors say, we'll send it to you once, and then after that, you got to use your discount code if you want more. And yeah, so everybody's a little bit different, but that's what's out there. So if I try them and I go, hey, okay, I'm getting a good result, I will at the same time share it with the people around me or my friends or my neighbor or somebody I know. And my ears are perked for whatever product that's sent to me. If it's a product for hot flashes, then I'm like, look, I take HRT. I don't have hot flashes. How am I going to test this? But I know people who do not want to take HRT, so I test it on them. And then I also have my own menopause and biohacking circles, and I go through them saying, hey, have you heard of this product? Have you tested it on your community? What do you think? It takes, again, a lot of work to do that. And then if I get good feedback, then I go, all right, let's have a chat about a sponsored episode, or if sometimes they don't have budgets, but I think the product is really great and I can't help it and I still do the episode. That's not me. But then if I do accept a sponsored episode, then my structure is, let's talk about the problem at first. Are we talking about hot flashes? Are we talking about joint pain? Are we talking about whatever it is that your product does? And then I want to offer solutions beyond your product. I want to talk about the free stuff or other things that may work, because we know there's very few magic bullets. And it's never really one thing. So usually if somebody's selling a product, it's an add-on, right? It's not just that. As much as we'd love to believe that, hey, it's just this magic bullet, it's not. So I love to talk about the things around that we can do to support whatever it is that person is going to talk about. And then if the product at some point is presented, we usually towards the end, let's talk about your product, what's in it, why it's so good, and then my own personal experience and why I like it and why I've accepted this interview. So that's the way I operate. I need money, but I'm not going to sell my integrity to somebody just for the money. And this matters a lot in menopause because it is a vulnerable space. It can be, but this is why I'm doing this episode, to empower you so that you know what goes on behind the scenes of these things. And it's not only a podcast, but it may be just a YouTuber, or it could be an Instagram influencer, these kinds of things. There's money to be made and it's not bad. These people need to survive. This is why I'm trying to explain to you. However, you want to look for people who do have ethics and integrity and try to vet for their products. And when you're feeling vulnerable, boy, I know what it was like when I was living with osteoarthritis and spending tens of thousands of dollars on things to relieve the hip pain. I would have paid anything. And I did. I did. If you listen to any of my episodes on osteoarthritis and my journey, I said I had to get the surgery because I ran out of money and I ran out of time. I spent too much. I couldn't find my solution. And I would have spent more on stem cells or something. I just didn't have time to. I mean, if I could, I would have spent the money, but I just ran out. Stem cells are expensive. And then I would have to wait like 3 months or 6 months to see if they actually worked. So I get it. I know what it's like to feel so desperate to spend money on things when you're really just out of solutions. So I think there are a lot of people preying on the menopause space. And I know you know that. And I want to protect my group. So I will not share things that I think are not really good. Again, that's why I want you to be empowered with this episode. And not everyone's like this. Not everyone is. Did I share this example? I feel like I did. The one about primidine, spermidine. Yeah. I don't know if I shared this or not, but I'm going to say it again. And Jonathan, my editor, hopefully, if you heard, I already shared this. So I feel like I think I need to increase my estrogen. So this was somebody who had a podcast, and he still has a podcast. And I saw that he was advertising a supplement called spermidine, which if you listen to my episodes, I love spermidine. Actually, I always talk about primidine, spermidine from Oxford Healthspan, because that was the first product I ever talked about. And because I got such great feedback, I keep going and going. And I think it's a fabulous product. And so anyways, when I saw him advertising a competitor, which I knew was synthetic spermidine, wasn't a good product. I said, why did you not sign the contract with Primidine or talk about Prime? I don't know if it was at the time, I wasn't sure if I even knew he had a contract or not. He said, well, the other one paid more. I'm like, but it's not a good product. I'm like, why would I was so shocked. I guess I was really naive. I couldn't believe it. I was like, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't care. Like people are buying this and you want them to buy synthetic spermidine. I do whole episodes on the difference between spermidines around. So yeah, it just happens. So I want you to be aware of that. And again, it is what it is. So keep in mind, I want to give you a little bit of tools to use. If you hear a podcast where someone's being interviewed and they're selling a product, pause for a moment. Doesn't mean like fast forward, you're selling something. It doesn't mean that. It just means you got to think a little critically. You got to be a little bit more skeptical. It doesn't mean the product is good or bad. It just means they're selling something. So they have a vested interest in this. And try to do your due diligence, go look elsewhere. You can do your reviews and see if that's something for you or not. And also keep in mind that in this biohacking space, we're constantly testing, measuring, assessing. And just because a product, even the one that I talk about that I think is really great and I see really good feedback, it may or may not work for you. I don't know. Nothing's 100%. I wish it were. All you can do is say, I'm going to try. And obviously, if it's a supplement, then run it by your doctor first before you take anything like that. So that's it. Here are some little things that you can do to support a podcast host that you like me, hopefully, without spending money or without spending very much. First thing is download the episode. If I haven't heard me say that already like 3 times, downloads count. That's where we can also ask for bigger sponsors as well. So if you're grateful for this episode or any other one that I've done, the best thing you can do is just keep listening, keep downloading, and share. That's another way to get the word out. And an added bonus, if you have just a minute, literally, it takes a minute and a half to write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Those are the places usually where you write reviews. That helps push the podcast out even more so we can get more listeners, and you get more downloads, right? And then next, if you want to take it next level, then try out some of the products that I share or the podcast host that you like and you trust and you believe has integrity that they're sharing. Use their link, probably better than the code, but if all you have a code, that's fine too. But use those links, use those products, because what happens is when a sponsor sees that there are people buying the product, then they're going to want to invest in that podcast host again. They're going to say, hey, I'll create another contract for you. And those renewals keep the podcast alive. That's really important. So it's kind of a win-win. So Anyways, just to wrap up, I really want to be transparent. I think transparency is power. It helps you make decisions. Be curious. Don't trust blindly what you see. Be a biohacker, test, measure, and assess, always adjust. And you're smart. I know. I believe in you. I know you can do all of this stuff. I just want to remind you, just in case. And don't ever doom scroll or look at things at 2 in the morning. You'll be too tempted to buy things. It's like going to the supermarket hungry. You just eat before you do your shopping. So, anyways, this podcast exists because of the trust, and trust really deserves honesty. And that's what I'm trying to be for you. So, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening to me over and over again. I really appreciate it. I couldn't be here 5 years later on, almost six, if it weren't for you. So I truly value your time. I'm so grateful for you. So if you wanted more of this juicy kind of stuff, you want to take deeper dives and want to know the behind the scenes, then join us in the Biohacking Menopause membership group. Here's my own plug now. Okay. So it would be really great to see you there. We have so much fun and it's a wonderful space. So I have a link to that in the show notes. So thank you again. Have a good day, good night, good morning, wherever you're at. And I'll see you next time.